I feel completely lost and don't know what to do. I overlooked the signs that were right in front of me. Love had blinded me, and I never thought this could happen to me, not with her, my wife and best friend for nearly 2 decades. I work out of town and wasn't supposed to be back until tonight. We had plans for a 2-week road trip starting tomorrow, and it was supposed to be a chance for us to enjoy some quality time together since we've been so caught up with family and friends this summer. When I arrived home yesterday afternoon, I noticed a truck parked in my driveway that I didn't recognize. Just recently, my neighbor had asked me how I felt about the new truck, but I figured he was mistaken and brushed it off. However, as I approached the vehicle, a terrible gut feeling washed over me. I loved my wife and trusted her completely, but that feeling was unmistakable and intense. I crept around the side of the house toward our bedroom window, which was open. As I got closer, I could hear them, and when I looked through the window, my worst fears were confirmed. There they were, completely naked on our bed. I turned away, fighting the urge to do something I would regret. Right now, I'm struggling to care about what happens to me. I spent the night at my family's cabin and drank everything in sight. Today, I was on my way back home to confront her but decided against it. I'm just not ready. All I feel is anger, and thoughts of violence are swirling in my mind. I don't think I'm in a good place to see her right now. I'm back at the cabin, staring at a 60-ounce bottle of rum for an hour. I want to drink and forget, but I know that getting drunk could lead to terrible decisions. I understand that this is a crucial moment in my life, and what I do in the coming days will shape my future. That's why I'm here, because I need help. I'm not ready to talk to family or friends, so I'm reaching out to strangers. Update 1: The amount of support and advice I've received has been incredible. It genuinely choked me up to realize how many good people are out there willing to help someone they don't even know. It gives me a little hope for humanity when I needed it most. The downside to all this kindness is that I'm having a hard time keeping up with responses. I've got over 600 unread private messages and several hundred comments waiting for my attention. I want to thank each of you individually, and I will make the effort, but it's going to take some time. So for now, let me just express a big thank you to everyone for your thoughtful messages and useful advice. It truly means a lot to me. I've noticed several recurring questions and comments, so I'd like to provide some clarity along with this minor update. If you can tell, I'm feeling a lot better today. The pain has almost faded away. I still feel like I've been punched in the gut, but other than that, I'm starting to look to the future. It's only been 2 days, though, so I'm wondering if this is the calm before the storm or if I'm just shockingly resilient. As for the questions and comments I've been receiving, here are some key points for clarification. When I mentioned my wife and best friend, I was referring to the 2 roles she played in my life. The other guy? He wasn't my best friend or someone I recognized. I didn't get a good look at him, but from what I could see and based on his vehicle, I don't think he's anyone I know. We don't have kids yet, but we were planning to start a family soon. We recently sold our house and were supposed to move closer to my job in September when the new owners would take possession. I plan to thank my neighbor, but I'll do it subtly, just like he did for me. A lot of people have been asking about the signs I mentioned missing. Off the top of my head, here are a few. She was texting unusually late at night and frequently going out for after-work drinks with friends, something she rarely did. I was glad she was being social, but it still felt off. She also attended yoga once a week, but it turned out she wasn't paying because one of her coworkers was the instructor, and she was helping with setup and cleanup. I also found it strange that she was so inflexible for someone who practiced yoga. Then there were the unknown calls or hang-ups. We typically answer each other's phones if we're nearby, but there were several times when I picked up calls from unknown numbers, only to hear a hang-up on the other end. We received a lot of spam calls, usually from telemarketers or debt collectors looking for the previous owner of the number, but it was rare for someone to hang up without saying anything. The situation is still a work in progress. When my brother came over, we had a long, heartfelt talk. He's been my true best friend, and I've realized I need to remember that he's always there for me without any judgment, just as I would be for him. He really sets the bar for what a true friendship looks like, even when we argue sometimes. Since I was meant to be home last night, I decided to reply to my wife's text. We're not allowed to use phones at work, so it was reasonable that I hadn't contacted her sooner. She knows I can sneak in a text or two, so I wrote to her saying that I needed to go to one of my company's remote sites and wouldn't be able to call until the end of the weekend. I told her I'd cancel all the reservations and rebook them later. She mentioned she could take her best friend with her this weekend to the romantic bed and breakfast at the vineyard that I had booked. I knew the best friend she meant wasn't the one she wanted me to think would be going. So, I told her I'd already given the reservation to my brother and his wife since it was non-refundable, and they would pay me back in a month. This morning, I cancelled all the reservations except for the romantic getaway. My brother was joining me for the trip, and fortunately, the hotel allowed me to switch from the honeymoon suite to a room with 2 beds. There's also a lovely lake nearby with boat rentals, so this ended up becoming a long overdue fishing trip with my brother. This means I have the weekend to myself. I don't have to write to her or talk to her for a few days, which eases some of the stress and gives me more time to think. Right now, I'm leaning toward divorce. Honestly, I can't envision it going any other way. My brother is supportive of this decision and has suggested I take a few weeks to speak to someone. His wife has a friend who's a couples counselor and is willing to talk to me on Monday. While I doubt it will change my mind, it might help untangle some of this mess. I'm also taking a lot of the advice I've received and starting to consult lawyers, at the very least to prepare for what I believe is inevitable. I want to handle this properly. I never imagined she would try to screw me over, but I also never expected her to cheat, so I think I need to be ready for anything. Thanks again, everyone. I'm going to try to enjoy my weekend as much as I can. A lot has happened in the last few days. I'll start with the less important stuff. My brother, Matt, and I drove nearly 5 hours to the B&B at the vineyard. I really appreciate him being there for me during this time. It was more of a venting session than anything else, but it helped clear my head. After spending much of the drive complaining to him, I just wanted some quiet time, while he was eager to go out for dinner. I stayed back in the room while he went out to eat, bringing me some food when he returned. He even managed to rent a boat for us for the next day. On Saturday, we hit the water. The owner of the B&B was aware of our fishing plans and kindly packed us a small cooler filled with food and drinks. It was their way of making the romantic package more suitable for 2 brothers, and it was a thoughtful gesture. Unfortunately, the fishing wasn't great. We caught a couple of trout that were too small to keep, so the snacks from the B&B came in handy. We stopped fishing in the afternoon and drove around to explore the vineyards and fruit stands, picking up food and cases of wine for Matt's wife, Jen. That night, we treated ourselves to the biggest tomahawk steak we could find. On Sunday, we headed back to Matt's place, which is in the next town over, about an hour away from where I live. When we arrived, Jen was there, and we all sat down to crack open a bottle of white wine we had chilling in the cooler. This was when the weekend officially came to an end for me. Jen told me that while we were away, she decided to spy on my wife. She revealed that the guy had been at my house on Friday night and stayed the entire time, but Jen managed to arrive just as he was leaving on Saturday morning. She followed him home and discovered where he lived. My wife spent Saturday night at his place, all while she was sending me messages saying she loved and missed me. Jen explained that she was dividing her time between visiting family in my town and keeping an eye on my wife. She mentioned that she caught my wife leaving the guy's apartment on Sunday morning and managed to snap a few pictures of them hugging and kissing before she got into her car. That revelation pretty much sealed the deal for me. I can't imagine ever being able to trust her again if she can so easily turn her feelings on and off, telling me she loves me while being with someone else. Still, I made a conscious decision not to react impulsively based on my emotions. I need to stay calm and composed. That's when Jen informed me that Sharon would be coming over for dinner. Sharon is the counselor that Jen set me up with an appointment to see. Just to clarify, she had never met my wife, and this was my first time meeting her as well. Sharon was a genuinely nice person, and we hit it off right away. After dinner, Sharon and I took a walk around Matt's neighborhood with the dogs to have a bit of private conversation. Sharon was incredibly helpful, she listened attentively and made me feel comfortable enough to share my feelings openly. It was therapeutic to express myself like that. Even though I'm quite comfortable talking with my brother, this experience felt different and was exactly what I needed. It's similar to why I enjoy sharing my thoughts on Reddit. It's a venting session that helps me sort through the chaos in my mind. Our walk lasted about an hour, and the only real advice Sharon gave me was not to postpone the conversation with my wife. She stressed that the longer I wait, the harder it would become to talk about what's happening. She told me I need clarity more than anything right now, and my wife is the only person who can provide that. Later that night, Jen and Matt offered me a place to stay for as long as I need. I know that Matt and I can only handle so much close proximity to each other before we start getting on each other's nerves. I had a conversation with my boss, who managed to arrange for me to stay in company housing. I've been living there every other week for a while, but he worked it out so I could stay full-time for a few months if I needed to. I decided to reschedule my appointment with Sharon for later this week. I figured our walk was a sufficient first session, and she agreed. That Sunday night, I lay in bed, thinking about how to approach everything. I struggled because even the imaginary scenarios in my mind were making me angry or sad. I decided I'd just wing it. I tend to perform well under pressure. The next morning, I woke up and said my goodbyes to Matt and Jen. As I drove home, I wondered what would happen if he was there when I arrived. But then I thought that would probably just send me back to the angry place I'd been a few days ago, so I opted for a drive-by first. Neither his truck nor my wife's car was in the driveway, so I went inside to grab some essentials and a few things I didn't want to part with, mostly photos and old family heirlooms. I packed everything up in my truck and then headed over to the guy's apartment. Her car wasn't there either, but his truck was. I decided to text her to find out where she was, and she replied that she was at the grocery store. I trust her so little right now that I actually drove by the grocery store to confirm she was there. I feel a bit dirty admitting that, but my trust is shattered, and it was the only way to be sure of anything. I texted her again, telling her to come home because we needed to talk. She replied, asking what was wrong. I just said she needed to be ready to be honest and then turned my phone off. She got home about 15 minutes later. When she walked in, she came over to give me a hug and kiss, just like she always does, but I turned away from her. She asked again what was wrong, so I told her she needed to start being honest with me. She played dumb and insisted she had no idea what I was talking about. I told her, okay, if you can't be honest, then I'm leaving. That's when she began to panic and asked if I was talking about yoga. I figured that was a starting point, so I asked her what she meant. She replied that she hadn't been going to yoga. Here's a bit of a breakdown of the rest of our conversation. If you weren't going to yoga, then where were you going? I was taking walks to relax because I've been so stressed lately. Why were you so stressed? And why did you lie to me about what you were doing? Preparing for the move has been stressing me out, and I just didn't know how to tell you. So lying was the choice you made? What were you worried about telling me? That you were going for a walk to distress. I didn't mean to lie. I was afraid my stress would add to yours. But I'm not stressed. It really seems like you're not being completely honest. What do you mean? I think you're lying about more than just skipping yoga. I'm asking you again to be honest. You've already lied to me, so this can't work if you keep doing that. I don't know what else to say. Are you talking about last weekend when I went out for drinks with some friends and came home late? I had a feeling that bothered you. I had no clue you were out for drinks or late. I was at work, a couple of hours away. Is that what you really did that night, or was that a lie too? I went out for drinks that night, but I didn't see her best friend, who I was supposedly with that night. Who did you see? No one. I just drank alone. You drink alone now? Yeah, maybe I have a problem. Maybe we'll talk about that later. Last chance, be honest, or I'm leaving. I don't know what else to say. Okay, I'm leaving. At that point, I got up and walked out. Usually, when we argue, I go for a drive to clear my head, and she probably thought this was the same. Then she realized I took my clothes and toiletries, as well as the Xbox. That's when she began blowing up my phone. I told her that I had given her a chance to be honest, and since she hadn't, there was nothing left to say. She begged and pleaded with me to come home and talk in person, insisting she had no idea why I was so upset or what I thought she did. She repeated that she loved me and would never hurt me. Hearing her say that really tore a new hole in my chest. Those comforting words used to be something I believed without question, but now they felt like a dull, jagged knife slicing through my heart in the most devastating way. I couldn't handle it, so I hung up. She called back about 40 times before I was ready to answer again. This time, she asked, "Did you talk to Karen, my best friend?" I asked why, and she said, "Come home." I don't want to say this over the phone. I agreed and drove around a bit longer to calm my racing heart before heading back home. That conversation went like this. "I assume you spoke to Karen." I didn't say a word. "Well, a few weeks ago while you were at work, we went out for drinks. A couple of guys started buying us drinks, so we just went along with it. When we were leaving, one of the guys tried to kiss me. I pulled away right away and told him I was married. I felt terrible about it and wanted to tell you, but I was an idiot and decided to hide it from you. Karen hooked up with the other guy and gave his friend my number without asking me. He's texted me a few times since, but I've never replied. Can I see your phone?" She handed it over, and I noticed it was completely empty of texts except for my messages and those from her mother. She never deletes her texts, so this was unusual. I checked her photos, which were also clean, but then I looked in a deleted folder and found a picture of a guy I didn't recognize. "Who's this?" "That's the guy who tried to kiss me." "Why did you take a picture of him?" "I was just being stupid." "That's not a reason." "Why did you take a picture of him?" "I don't know." "Is that everything you want to tell me, or is there more?" "That's all I can think of." Once again, I walked away. I didn't want to deal with her trickle of truth. I climbed into my truck and drove off. She ran outside, trying to stop me, but I was already too far away. I headed to a nearby park and just sat on the tailgate, eating my lunch while trying to figure out my next move. While I sat there, memories flooded back, things I should have been more aware of. Like the time I was working a weekend shift, and she was in bed early. She went out to a club with some girlfriends, and I woke up at 4 a.m. to find she still wasn't home. I called her several times, but there was no answer. About 30 minutes later, she called back, asking if I could come get her. When I picked her up, she told me they had been trying to hail a taxi but had no luck. A couple of guys her friend knew stopped to offer them a ride. They wanted to stop at the guy's house first. Once they got there, her married friend went into a room with one of the guys. My wife said she spent some time looking for her but eventually gave up and had a drink in the kitchen with the roommates while she waited. She claimed she didn't hear her phone ringing when I tried to call. We argued about this, and she was disgusted by her friend's behavior, so she cut that friend out of her life. I thought that was behind us. Then there was the time she traveled to visit a close friend in another city for a planned girls' night. I was told there were 4 girls all getting drunk and watching movies at their place. Then she called me around 1 a.m. to say goodnight. We talked for about 20 minutes, and she kept saying they were having a great girls' night. Then I heard a guy's voice in the background. I asked who it was, and at first, she denied hearing anything, but it happened again, loudly this time. She couldn't deny it, so she finally said, "Oh yeah, ex brought a couple of guys with her. Everyone here is super pissed about it. She was drunk and 3 hours away. I had no choice but to trust her again. We argued about that and why she refused to tell me they were there. She promised she would never put herself in that kind of situation again. Clearly, that promise didn't stick. After remembering all those things and our conversations about them, I felt ready to give this one last shot. I turned my phone back on, and almost immediately, it rang. I answered, and she was screaming for me to come home. I drove back to the house. As soon as I walked in, she confronted me, tears streaming down her face. She was sitting on the couch, repeating, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I asked her, "Sorry for what?" She started rocking back and forth like she was losing it, taking a good 5 minutes to catch her breath before she could speak. I lied about the guy who tried to kiss me. "Okay, tell me what happened." The four of us actually went back to his place that night, and we fooled around. Hearing her say that made me feel dizzy. I had a sense it was more than that, but just hearing it out loud made the room feel like it was closing in on me, and I could hear a million voices shouting in my ears. I think I was having a panic attack. I rushed to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face until I felt somewhat normal again. "What did you do? Do you really want me to tell you?" "Yes." "All right, I'll skip the graphic details, but it was bad." "Was that it?" "Yes. I'm not playing this game anymore. You either tell me everything right now, or this is the last time we speak." She started crying again, taking another few minutes to gather her thoughts. We met up again and had sex. "I'm so sorry. I love you, and I'll do anything to make up for this. Just the one time. If I tell you the truth, please give me a chance to make it right. I'll think about it. It was an affair. We've been hooking up while you've been out of town for work. It's been going on for almost a month now. He's married, and they're about to get divorced. Does he know you're married?" "Yes. Here's the thing, if he's having an affair because his marriage is failing, does that mean you think ours is failing? Is that what you told Kim?" "No. I don't think ours is failing. I'm so stupid. I hate myself. Please don't leave me. I can fix this, whatever you want. If you were in my shoes or even in his wife's shoes, what would you need to fix this? Knowing the truth, being able to trust you to mean what you're saying. You can trust me. I screwed up, and I won't do that again. If you were his wife, wouldn't you want to know the truth? Then let's fix this. Do you want me to call her?" She tried calling but never got an answer. Just then, her phone rang, and it showed as Karen Work. She looked shocked, so I knew that wasn't Karen. "Is it him?" I asked. "Yes," she replied. I answered the call, and being the coward he is, he said, "Oops. I must have the wrong number. No, this is the husband of the girl you've been cheating with. I'm going to let you speak to her because she has something to say." I passed the phone to her. I told him everything. He knows the entire truth. We're done. It was just a fling, and now you need to never contact me again. I asked to see the phone before she hung up. "What divorce lawyer are you using?" "I'm not getting divorced." "Oh, but didn't you tell your wife that you were?" "No." "Okay, then can I speak to your wife? I feel she has as much right to know about this as I do." "Please, man. I didn't know she was married. Don't ruin my marriage over a mistake. You ruined mine over a mistake. It's only fair that I tell your wife. Please don't. She's at work right now. I will tell her everything when she gets home, I swear." "Okay, you do that." That's where I hung up. I asked my wife if she knew where his wife worked and what her name was. She did. I had my wife call over to her workplace and asked for her. She managed to get her on the phone, and I told her to take a seat. "This is serious," my wife said. "I have something terrible to tell you, and I don't want to cause any accidents. Please don't drive." "Oh my God. Did something happen to his name?" "No, no. He's at your apartment right now. I'm just letting you know that we've been having an affair for a month now. I'm coming clean to my husband right now and thought you should be given the same respect." There was silence for about a minute, then she said, "If this is some sick joke, I will find out who you are." Then she hung up. Not even 10 minutes later, my wife received a text from Karen Work, saying, "Thanks. You just ruined my life." I grabbed the phone and responded, "You just ruined 4 lives and 2 marriages. Don't forget that this was your fault, you piece of crap." For the next hour, my wife begged and pleaded with me to stay with her. She offered counseling and said she would never leave my side. She even offered sexual favors. This was everything I expected, thanks to the comments I had received here. She suggested we go on that vacation, her treat, claiming we needed time away to spend quality time together because my work schedule had been pushing us apart lately. That was exactly what I expected her to say. She clearly wasn't expecting me to tell her that I had already gone on my trip. She also didn't anticipate me saying I had counseling booked for myself. And she definitely wasn't ready for me to tell her that I had caught her cheating in our very own bed. When I revealed all of that, she fell to the floor, sobbing. She started saying she didn't deserve to live, claiming I should just kill her right then because she was too terrible to be with anyone. It went on like that for a while. I stayed for a total of 4 hours, listening to her make excuses, trying to hug me, cuddle with me, or offer sexual favors if I would just stay and work through this with her. In the end, I called Karen and told her that her cheating friend was suicidal and that she should come keep an eye on her. Then I left. It's been almost a full day since that all went down, and I haven't spoken to her since. She's been calling and texting me all day, and her friends and family have been reaching out to me as well. Everyone has a different excuse or a different plea for empathy. Her father is the only one who wrote to me, telling me to do what's best for me and that he would always love me like a son, no matter what happens. Reading that made me break down and cry for the first time since all of this began. I have an appointment with Sharon, my counselor, tomorrow and a lawyer on Thursday. I think you can guess where this is headed, but until it happens, I'm just unsure about everything. This past week has been incredibly eventful. I've been going back and forth between my family's cabin and my brother's place, trying to be as little of a burden on them as possible. I only stay over on the nights when I have an early appointment. My company has allowed me to take a few weeks of personal time, which has been a huge help. I've continued visiting Sharon, my therapist. I've seen Sharon, my counselor, a total of 3 times now. Personally, I'm in a better state of mind than I was last week. While I don't find our visits to be particularly productive, they give me a chance to clear my thoughts, so I'll keep going for now. I spoke with a lawyer last Thursday, and following their guidance, I made a list of all our assets and finances, including our debts. Then I went to the bank and asked them to put a hold on our accounts so that neither of us could withdraw money without the other person present. We both have our paychecks deposited into our personal accounts, so this won't stop either of us from accessing new funds, it only restricts access to the old, shared money. The lawyer advised me not to confront her until I served her the papers, but at this point, it's already too late for that. Throughout the week, I was bombarded with calls and texts from my wife, her family, and her friends. This past weekend, my sister-in-law organized a family gathering at the cabin. I attended and finally opened up to my family, so at least it's out in the open now, and I can involve them in my recovery process. Things were going as well as could be expected until Saturday night around 8 p.m. I was sitting around the fire with my brother and dad when my wife's car pulled up. My brother Matt said he would handle it, while my dad and I decided to take a walk around the property to stay out of sight from the driveway. We were barely in the woods when I heard my wife screaming at my brother to get out of her way. She had a couple of friends with her who were also yelling at Matt, telling him to mind his own business. He made a valiant effort to stand his ground, but ultimately, they overwhelmed him. She pushed past him and rushed straight toward us, likely having spotted us in the distance. My dad offered to deal with her, but I told him I would handle it. My wife, let's call her Kate for simplicity, came running over to me, crying. She immediately went for a hug, and while I didn't stop her, I didn't hug her back either. She pleaded with me to just talk, so I agreed, and we walked along the property trails to have a bit of privacy. Kate began by telling me that the other guy's wife had left him. She claimed he had called, threatening to commit suicide and blaming it all on her. She said she told him to just go ahead and do it, and she hasn't spoken to him since. Then, she pulled out a piece of paper and started listing all the ways she promised to make it up to me, everything she had offered on that first day, from couples counseling to sexual requests. But then she caught me off guard. She said she didn't want to continue living this way. She suggested that we both quit our jobs and move overseas to start that beach bar we had always talked about. She claimed she would leave right then if I would go with her. To put this into context, while trying to envision my life post-divorce over the past week, this was the only thing I could think of. I figured if I was going through the effort of making a massive change, I might as well add another piece and do exactly what I wanted. Hearing her express the same desire snapped me back into that feeling of missing her and wanting to be with her. That was the moment I knew I had to end the conversation. I walked her back to her car, where her friends were waiting, and told her I'd be willing to talk on the phone but couldn't promise anything beyond that. It calmed her enough to leave. We've spoken on the phone each night since, but it's always the same. She cries and begs me for another chance, and I get angry at her for what she did and hang up. Right now, I'm struggling with missing her terribly. She was my best friend for decades, so losing that person to talk to is incredibly hard. Realizing that all the dreams and plans we shared have just been thrown away is devastating. I want nothing more than to pack it all up and start life over somewhere else, and I want that to be with her. But she ruined it. She robbed me of that future. After a few more days of agonizing back-and-forth phone calls, I decided I needed a break. The constant pleading from Kate was wearing me down. I'd never seen her so vulnerable, and it tugged at my heartstrings in a way I didn't want it to. Every time we spoke, I could hear the desperation in her voice, and it made me question everything all over again. I knew I had to maintain my resolve, but part of me was still drawn to the love we had shared for so long. The days felt like they were dragging on. I spent my time going through old photos and memories, reminiscing about the good times we had together. I found pictures of our trips, holidays, and the dreams we had for the future, things I once took for granted. It was a bittersweet journey down memory lane, as it reminded me of the connection we once shared, but it also highlighted the chasm that had grown between us. I started to realize that part of my struggle came from the life I envisioned for myself after the divorce. I wanted to be free and start fresh, but the thought of losing her still haunted me. I began to wonder if I could really walk away from everything we built together. I missed having her by my side, the late-night conversations, the laughter, and the simple comfort of her presence. As I prepared for my meeting with the lawyer, I felt a heavy weight on my shoulders. I knew I needed to take that step, yet part of me was still clinging to hope that we could salvage what we had. I was torn between wanting to move on and the fear of fully letting go. The thought of officially ending our marriage made my stomach churn, but I also knew it was necessary for my peace of mind. When the day finally arrived, I sat in the lawyer's office, going over the legalities and the logistics of separation. It felt surreal discussing assets and custody arrangements, even though we had no kids. I was simply trying to protect what I had left, but it all felt so clinical, so devoid of the emotion that was tearing me apart inside. The lawyer's voice was just background noise as I drifted into my thoughts, reflecting on everything that had happened. After the meeting, I decided to take a walk to clear my mind. I found myself wandering to a nearby park where we used to spend weekends together. Sitting on a bench, I watched families and couples enjoying the sunshine, laughing and playing. It was a stark contrast to the turmoil in my heart. I felt a wave of loneliness wash over me, and for a moment, I let myself imagine what life would be like without Kate. Would I really find happiness again? Or would I be haunted by the memories of what we had? I picked up my phone to call her but hesitated. I wasn't sure what to say. I needed to be strong, but the urge to reach out was overwhelming. Just then, a message came through from her, asking if we could talk again. I took a deep breath and typed out a response, agreeing to meet her later that evening. When the time came, I found myself pacing in my living room, filled with anticipation and dread. I didn't know if I was ready to hear her voice or face the reality of our situation. But I also knew I couldn't keep avoiding it. As the doorbell rang, my heart raced, and I opened the door to find her standing there, looking both hopeful and heartbroken. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded and stepped aside, letting her in. This was it, the moment I had been both dreading and longing for. As we sat down, I could feel the tension in the air. She looked at me with those familiar eyes, searching for understanding and forgiveness. I wanted to believe in the possibility of us, but the weight of her betrayal still loomed large. "Please, just let me explain," she said, her voice trembling. I took a deep breath, ready to listen, knowing this conversation could change everything. As Kate sat across from me, I could see the desperation etched on her face. She took a deep breath, and for the first time, I could sense her sincerity. "I know I've messed up beyond repair, but I need you to understand something. I didn't just throw away our love, I was lost. I let fear and confusion cloud my judgment. The thought of losing you scared me, and I didn't know how to handle it." I listened intently, my heart torn between anger and a flicker of hope. "And what about the other guy? You let him into our lives, into our home," I shot back, my voice laced with pain. "How can I trust you again?" She leaned forward, her eyes pleading. "I know I don't deserve your trust right now, but I promise I'll do whatever it takes to earn it back. I want to fight for us, not just for me, but for you too. We can start over, leave this town, this past behind us. I want to move away and build that life we dreamed of." The idea stirred something within me, igniting the old feelings I thought I had buried. I couldn't deny the spark of excitement at the thought of a fresh start, but doubt still plagued me. "You want to leave everything behind just like that? You think it will fix things?" "Maybe not fix them, but give us a chance to rebuild," she insisted. "I want to show you how serious I am. Let's take a trip together, just you and me. No distractions, just the two of us." I hesitated, weighing the consequences of such a decision. But as I looked into her eyes, I saw a glimmer of the woman I fell in love with, the partner who had always been by my side. "Fine," I finally said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Let's go. But this is your last chance. If we're going to do this, it has to be all or nothing." The relief that washed over her was palpable, and I couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. We quickly made plans for a weekend getaway to a secluded cabin in the woods, a place where we could reconnect without the weight of our past hanging over us. As the days passed, anticipation grew. I packed my bags, feeling a mix of excitement and trepidation. We drove out to the cabin, the familiar scenery gradually shifting to breathtaking landscapes that felt like a fresh canvas for our lives. When we arrived, the air was crisp, and the setting sun bathed everything in golden light, igniting a sense of possibility. That evening, as we sat by the fireplace, I watched Kate open up in a way I hadn't seen in years. She shared her fears, her regrets, and her hopes for the future. With each word, the walls I had built around my heart began to crumble. We talked until the early hours of the morning, laying bare our souls as the flames flickered in the fireplace. Just as I started to believe that we could truly heal, the unexpected happened. In the midst of our conversation, Kate's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and paled. "It's him," she whispered, her hands shaking. "He's texting me again." Panic surged through me. Why now? I demanded. After everything? I don't know. I thought I was done with him. She opened the message, and her eyes widened in horror. He says he's coming to find me. The tension in the room escalated, and just then, there was a loud knock at the door. We froze, our hearts pounding. Kate, a familiar voice called from outside. It was the other guy, desperate and angry. I have to handle this, Kate said, panic-stricken. I can't let him ruin this chance for us. No. You can't go out there alone. I pleaded, but she was already on her feet, opening the door just a crack. What followed was a whirlwind. The guy pushed his way inside, anger flashing in his eyes. You think you can just leave me? I won't let you, he shouted, looking between us. Before I knew it, I stepped in front of Kate, instinct kicking in. You need to leave. This is over, I declared, my voice steady. The atmosphere crackled with tension as we faced off. But then, to my surprise, Kate stepped beside me, her voice unwavering. No, it's not your choice anymore. I'm done with you. This is my life, and I'm taking control. In that moment, something shifted. The guy looked taken aback, and as if sensing the power in her words, he stepped back, confusion clouding his expression. You don't mean that, he protested, but there was a tremor in his voice. We're done, Kate repeated firmly, her hand slipping into mine. With our united front, the guy finally realized he had no power here. He stormed out, leaving us in stunned silence. I turned to Kate, our eyes locking, and in that moment, everything changed. We had faced the storm together, and we emerged stronger. Are you okay? I asked, my heart racing. I am, she breathed, tears glistening in her eyes, but they were different now, reflective of relief and newfound strength. I'm ready to fight for us, for real this time. And just like that, the walls between us crumbled. In the aftermath of chaos, we found a path forward, together. It wasn't going to be easy, but we were both willing to put in the work. That weekend became our turning point, a testament to our resilience. As we embraced, I felt hope blossom anew, intertwining with the love we had nearly lost. Whatever lay ahead, we would face it as partners, determined to reclaim our dreams and build a life filled with trust and happiness once more. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe to the channel to watch my next videos and share with me your opinion, what you would do in my place.